Okay, hello everyone. Hopefully you guys can hear us pretty well. And we should be able to get some feedback here in the next couple minutes. What's your husband doing today?
I don't know. I should have probably told him to tune in.
To have him actually.
I don't even know if he knows I'm here right now. That would have probably been a good idea.
It's all right. We know he's your number one fan, so he'll get your
He
notification.
is.
All right, everyone. Hello, good afternoon. We're here at Greenlight Coffee. I am Kristin Diaz, and we have our soon-to-be world-renowned author. We have Dr. Amy Aldridge Sanford. Hello.
Hello.
I noticed first and foremost that you omitted doctor on your title.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a reason for that?
It's pretty common with writing books like this that people with PhDs tend to leave off the PhD at the end.
Okay.
I think maybe for some people it's a turn-off when they see that someone's has so many degrees that perhaps they don't think they can
Relate or
yeah,
something?
Yeah,
Relate.
my book's really meant for more of a lay audience. It can be used as a textbook, and some people are using it as a textbook.
Let me tell you, when I started reading this, I was reading it in your voice. Like I could hear you actually reading this to me, and which made it even cooler because I was like, wow, it's so nice to know that you're accessible. You're somebody that we can reach out to. We can ask questions. We can be on this Facebook page and let you know how we feel about your writing and how it's made us feel. So that's really
that.
awesome. And I hope that all of you who pick up a book, here it is right here, From Thought to Action. You know about this because you're following her page. Oh, I'm sure she would like to say thank you, but definitely I would like to say thank you for following and tuning in with us today. So please send in your questions. You can comment them here on our Facebook Live. If you can't hear us for any reason, we seem to be too low, we'll make some adjustments, but it's all almost like live TV, but live Facebook, okay? So we want to know what you guys think. Getting into this book, first and foremost, let's talk about your dedication page. So you talk about your family and you talk about your forever students. You talk about some other folks here that are listed. Who are these people in your life?
So there are a few people on this dedication page. The first two are my mom and my dad, who are both passed now. And so actually this book coming out for me has been bittersweet because they would have loved this. Yeah. And they both passed before I even started writing the book. The Walker family, there's a long story there, but I have a biological father who I just recently learned of in the last few years, and he's no longer with us. He didn't know about me, but his family is the Walker family, and they've really embraced me. They're in Kansas. They're wonderful. And then my Aunt Vicky is my mom's sister, who's still with us, and just taught me, I grew up in poverty, and she taught me a different life than that because I had her in my life. And then Dana was one of my college professors. Rusty is written about in the first chapter of the book, and a lot of people know about Rusty. He totally changed my life because of mistakes I made with our friendship. And then my husband's in there, Gene, who's wonderful. And then my forever students, who it's what I call my students that were in my classroom, in our classroom. And I started teaching back in 1999 as a 22-year-old. And so I've had a lot of students. Millennials are kind of my thing. I'm no longer in the classroom full time. And so when I wrote this book, you heard my voice, I saw their faces, because this was a book I always wanted for them, and it just didn't exist.
Wow.
And so that's why this book got written. Wow. And many of the books that have been bought so far were bought by my students.
Awesome.
and my forever students. And that means a lot to me because now they have the book.
For sure. No, definitely. And they're probably thinking, I remember her talking about this in class. I remember her, talking about this when I was working on this project. The waves that you're making in the classroom and the waves that you're making with this book, we hope will continue to ripple for generations to come, because that's what our legacy is to be able to pass on our knowledge. And you've passed a lot of personal moments here of growth. Going into that first chapter, and if you guys have this book at home while you're watching this, please feel free to, bring it out, have this next to you while we are discussing it so you can ask us your questions. But chapter 1 is Raised by Racists and Murphy Brown. That's That's strong.
Yeah.
That is really strong. And when we talk about this and we go into you start talking about illegal immigration and then your own personal experience, it's a really strong first chapter. What one made you choose that name?
Well, so this may be the blessing why my parents are not here anymore. Sometimes you just got to call it what it is, and I adored my parents, but I know now, reflecting back on my childhood, that there were some racist things said in my family, and I talk about some of those things.
Yeah.
But I also talk about how being a child growing up in the 80s, a girl child, in the middle of America, because I grew up in Oklahoma, to have parents who allowed me to speak my mind was a gift they gave me.
Right.
But the problem was the racism. And as I grew as a child of the 80s, popular culture became very important to me. I had a little 13-inch black and white TV in my bedroom, and I could watch Murphy Brown, who was just this strong news anchor like yourself.
Yeah.
I hope you like her too, because I
you.
love Murphy Brown.
Thank you.
And Julia Sugarbaker from Designing Women. For me, were two women who I could watch and think, there's no apologies I have to make, for being a strong woman. And so I'm fortunate that I grew up in the 80s and could see those role models. And then Janet Jackson, too.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
She was, and I just saw her in concert a year ago.
That's
and
amazing.
It was an incredible moment. Dixie Carter, who played Julia Sugarbaker, is no longer around. And so if I could meet Candace Bergen one day, who played Murphy Brown,
Yes.
I would be a very happy person.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. I like how you highlight some strong words and vocab that you want whoever is reading your book to have a takeaway. Some of these words, as simple as truth.
Yeah, so the thing about truth with a capital T is that I, as a professor, never really prescribed to it. And as a social scientist, I could get by with that. I'm not a chemist, right? I'm a social scientist. I study people. I study their lived experiences and what they bring to the table. And so I believe more in truths, lowercase t, S on the end. Okay?
Love it.
And that people have multiple truths. What my truth is not your truth, because you're in a different generation, you're a woman of color, we may have different religious backgrounds, we may have different parental units, I don't, I had two parents, the same two parents growing up, then I had this weird wrench thrown in when I found out about my biological dad, so there's things that just make people's experiences different.
Right.
And so what I could always do with my students is I could encourage them to speak their truth. And let them know you're not wrong when you're speaking your truth. Now, I may not like their truth. I may not like what they think about Muslims, for example. And that's a journey we can take together. But I need to know what their truth is up to that moment.
Yeah, and that's even when you say I need to know their truth at that moment, that's even a little more personal than just surface level saying I just need to know on paper for the project. I mean, this goes down into a very close relationship you had with a friend. We talk about Rusty just in your dedication page. He's also mentioned in your first chapter. Tell me a little bit about Rusty without giving too much of the book away. Yeah,
so something about writing a book that centers so much on difference when you're a white cisgender woman from the middle of America is that I think I really had to share my story. It was also, you'll notice on the first page of the book, there's a picture of me. And that was important to me too, for people to see what I look like and who I am, because I'm not trying to pretend to be something I'm not. And so I tell my story, and I tell the story in the first chapter because I made a lot of mistakes, particularly until I was in graduate school. And that's when I started to have a consciousness raising and made some changes in my life. Rusty was my very good friend in college, and we ended up becoming roommates when I got my first master's when I was still in Oklahoma. And we were really close friends. And I went off to Iowa for graduate school, and Rusty was still in Oklahoma. And he came out to me. He did it over Yahoo Chat when I moved hundreds of miles away, even though he had known the whole time I knew him that he was gay. And I know why he waited, because I did exactly what he thought I would do, and that was judging. And at the time, I was pretty steeped in a church that still doesn't embrace the LGBTQ communities. And he came from that church tradition as well. And so I took it upon myself to tell him that we needed to pray it away, that he could never act on it. You know, he already had. I didn't know, because he couldn't share his truth with me, you know. And so I was awful to him. And Rusty is an incredible person, and was then too, but he got tired of the judgment. And so he went away out of my life. And I tried to make up for it for the next decade with the choices I made as a person, but also in what I taught my students. I went back to my alma mater to teach after I left Iowa. I thought, I'm going to spend a few years here, and I'm going to teach the Amy Aldridge that I was, because I know those students, they all come, I grew up an hour from that university, I knew where they were coming from. That I'll spend some time teaching these students, I'll finish my dissertation, then I'm out of here, you know. I stayed 9 years.
Wow.
And in fact, I just left that school when I came to Corpus 6 years ago. And it was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life, is teach at my alma mater. And I'm going to be back there soon for book signing, which I'm extremely. It's my birthday week when I'll be there.
Shout out!
Yeah,
and
I'm
what
extremely. I'll be there the 26th of November, on Tuesday morning. And so, the good news is, though, that Rusty and I are back together. It took us losing another very good friend too early in life, but we honor him by being friends again. And it says a lot more about Rusty than it says anything about me. Yeah. He will be at that book signing likely. Yeah. He's very excited about this book. Originally, when I wrote this first chapter, I wrote it early on. You don't typically write chapters in order. You can write them in whatever order you want. But I actually ended up writing chapter 1 first, about 5 years ago. And I didn't use his real name because we weren't back. It was a friendship I thought I'd never have again.
Yeah.
And right before this book went to print, about 6 months or so ago, he knew about this story and everything that was in the book. I then sought his permission to use the story. And he told me to use his name. He told me to use his real name. And so that's why it's in there. I would never, out anyone. That's a cardinal sin of an ally to ever do that. But he wanted his name used.
Yeah.
I mean, I just can't say enough about the kind of person he is. And he thinks I'm a little radical. He does. He thinks I need to chill out. He's going to think even more so after he reads the book. He's reading it right now, so I'm sure.
Well, Rusty, we welcome you if you are on this Facebook Live today to give us all a shout out. We would love to hear from you as well, because yesterday was National Coming Out Day, and that's huge. And to know that is part of your truth, being on the other side of accepting somebody's message and being able to live in absolute peace, knowing that they are truly being who they are. It's a two-way street. It's not just about people having to, come out of the closet, but it's about how are we receiving those who have a message to say to us.
I'll tell you, one of the biggest honors that ever happened to me as an educator was when I had a student reach out to me, and he wanted to see me on a Saturday, and I told him I was teaching in another city that day, another campus, and he wanted lunch. It was a forever student. It was a student who was no longer in my classroom. He was in law school at that time. And he wanted to have lunch with me because I was one of the first few people he came out to.
Wow.
And so that was a good moment, because I thought, okay, now I've become a person people feel comfortable coming out to. And that's a big honor. I mean, if you're someone watching this and you're someone people choose to come out to, it's because they know they'll feel embraced, especially if they do it early on. So.
We continue with the books, and I say S-Joe, it's social justice, but SJO, you say, is a journey. When was the aha moment for you?
My aha moment was with losing Rusty. And I was in a really good geographical space. I mean, it was super uncomfortable, but I was in Iowa City, Iowa, and at a huge university, a big research one, very liberal city in Iowa. And I got to be extremely uncomfortable for 3 years. And I got to, I share some of the stories in the book about getting called out a lot. I had a fellow student who was female to male trans, and I always used the wrong pronoun. And he would call me out for it in front of people.
Oh, wow.
And not kindly,
Wow.
and it was super uncomfortable, but I'm so grateful for it, and had lots of moments like that. And I began to read about people's truths. I began to read a lot of autobiographies and watch a lot of movies about people's lives. I just wanted to understand other people and where they came from, and that was my journey, And so throughout the book, you'll see all these reference, ideas about books you can read, movies you can watch, that sort of thing. Because for me, that was extremely helpful.
And that's half the battle sometimes, right? I mean, is for us to actually recognize, one, when we're wrong, and two, when is it that we need more knowledge, because knowledge is power.
Right.
Because you have to do the work. People can tell you all day, this is wrong, this is not right, but they might be speaking their truth. Where do you draw the line of seeing clearly?
Well, this brings up an important point. I think so much of the time we put the labor on the people who are marginalized, and we expect them to do all the educating. And that is something I've learned along the way, is that I should not expect that. I should expect to do my own work, and to figure out my own embrace through my own ways, right? And if you're lucky enough to have friends in your life who are marginalized and who want to share their experiences with you, then you're quite fortunate,
You've written this book. How deep into your own labor did it take to make this? Because you said it took 5 years.
Yeah.
But a lifetime, it seems like, of lessons.
And I'm a pretty private person. Most people think I'm very extroverted. I am, but if you would to look at a Myers-Briggs on me, you would see actually I'm about half and half. I'm not really that extroverted, but I'm extremely private about my private life, more so than people even realize. And so the vulnerability, to write that first chapter was very, very difficult. Maybe that's why it took me 5 years, is because the thought of putting that out there,
it's scary
for everyone to read, was pretty scary.
Yeah.
So about halfway through writing the book, I became a full-time university administrator. And when you're a full-time university administrator, there is no release time for research. As a department chair and as a professor, when I was still in the classroom, I had release time for research. And so this got written on the weekends.
Wow.
And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful to my partner, Gene, because he gave up his weekends too, his time with me especially. That's when it got written. But I was so determined. I kept thinking somebody else is going to write this book. I would keep watching like Amazon and educational, because my distributor is actually an academic publisher. I just kept watching those academic publishing houses and thought, someone's going to write this book. I'm not going to have to finish this book. I'll use these for I'll use this for a conference paper or something. I won't have to finish the book. But it never happened. And I had to finish the book.
It was your mission.
And it was funny, the chapters 2 and 3 are history chapters. Right. Because there's so many people who have been written out of history. And my goodness, writing one paragraph in one of those chapters would take me months, because it's not easily accessible. I would drove all over South Texas to learn about Hispanic American rights, right? Mexican American rights, and Chicanos and sites in South Texas, and that just took forever. And so many sites in South Texas are no longer marked. And, the U.S. Black Civil Rights Movement was a little bit easier, actually, to research. And I'm living in the midst of, border, and I had a hard time finding information.
And how has that affected you now with that research being done, being now at a university so close to the border, and seeing the issues, the social issues that have been headlined here in South Texas?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have been extremely fortunate in my career because I've taught in places that our mission really centers around students of color, of minority experiences. So here I'm at an Hispanic serving institution. Where I was before was not a tribal college, but it was a former Cherokee seminary.
Oh, wow.
And it sits in the capital of the Cherokee Nation.
Wow.
And as you know, of the 400 plus nations in the U.S., what is now the U.S., it is one of the largest, if not the largest. So I've always lived in those spaces, and which has given me some sensitivities I didn't even recognize till I got older. But being here, I really just want to encourage people to fight for their basic rights, and I know that politeness is such an important part of South Texas culture. I've definitely learned that, especially in Corpus. People are so just so genuine and kind to each other that even with oppressors, sometimes I think there's a hard time speaking up. Not so much in California, actually. The Chicano movement was much more influential in a different way over there. But here people are still quite polite. And so I hope that reading through, especially chapter 5 that talks about all these activists and their turning points, I hope maybe that'll encourage some people to think about different ways they can speak up. And another chapter talks about all these different things you can do as an activist, right? You don't have to be out in front of the courthouse with a sign.
Right.
I mean,
you don't have to be Jane Fonda.
No, although I have a tank top of Jane Fonda in her mugshot.
She just was arrested yesterday.
Oh, good for her. I do like her. She's kind of my Murphy Brown category. But there are all kinds of ways that you can protest.
Yeah.
And some people need to start in different places. Some people will never be a part of a loud march or anything like that. And that's okay. They need to do what they can do.
Being an activist, being an advocate, I'd like to say you're an advocate for all people, because all people have their truth, and that is the hardest thing for us to be able to overcome sometimes, is to live that. But we had some hair-raising words, racist, truth. What about feminists? I want to know your take on that.
So I've written about that before too, about feminism, and I did a study which actually kind of started this larger book project. I did a study of students in the middle of the U.S. And their thoughts about the word feminist and their thoughts about the word activist, and they had similar thoughts. They didn't like it. They don't like those terms, but they were doing the work of feminist and activist. So what I embrace it, as you know.
Yes.
I use the terminology, and I use it frequently. I will say in a meeting, I was in a meeting the other day, and I did not come in with an agenda because it was a meeting about period products at the university, which has been a great thing that we've done with Islander Feminist and the period project movement here in Corpus.
Right.
And so I came to that meeting without an agenda, and the first thing I said was, it wouldn't be very feminist of me to tell you what we're going to talk about today. So I'm always using the language, because as a communication scholar, language is everything.
Everything. Words
and
mean
I
things.
want us to embrace it. I know there's a movement out there to replace the terminology. Some people want to do that. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep using it. I'm all about reclamation of words, right? And so I use it. I use activist. I use advocate, but my hope is that people will use it and understand what it is. Being a feminist is just about equality. That's all it means. It's not about anyone being better.
Right.
Some people are under this impression it means that we want women to have more rights than men. Or women identifying folks, more rights than male identifying folks. And that's not the goal of the majority, clear majority of feminists. And I certainly know a lot of pro-feminist men who identify as male in my life too.
Wonderful.
Certainly.
Going into, so we speak about some of the language, we talk about your personal, goals with wanting to share your stories and hoping that ripple effect of speaking your truth will help others to speak their truths. You talk more also in the back of the book of working in groups, building coalitions, actually getting started, because that's a lot of times when people don't know where to step first.
Yeah, so actually my PhD is in group communication. And so I couldn't write a book and not address leadership and working in groups and being a good follower.
Because those are important rules,
yes,
right?
Yes,
Rules of the road.
you can't ignore that, right? And leadership in activist movements is not a top-down leadership. It's a lead from the middle. And some folks actually, and when you look at civil rights movements around the 60s, they never had really clear leaders. They might have a leadership committee. They might have a revolving leader. John Lewis was a part of SNCC, and they would do that, right? And so there was never, ever a clear leader, which is kind of a cool thing. Hard to do,
right.
Really hard to do. But I just give some guidance in the book, just even about how to organize a meeting, how to, there's a part in the book where you can see about how to organize tasks, and I understand it doesn't work for everybody. You got to find your way to lead and your way to follow. And I'll just say, we need far more good followers than we need leaders. And some of us who are natural leaders sometimes just need to sit back, and do the work and listen to other people and just embrace their leadership and learn from a different style, because it's not inferior to your style, especially if you're working within different cultures, right? Which I've learned here. This collectivism is extremely important, and valuing family time over a task, sometimes is what's going to happen. If you're expected at grandma's house, you're going to be at your grandma's house.
Yeah.
That's just...
Don't we know that?
Yes, that's just become very clear, and I've learned to embrace that and appreciate that. But that's not the way I was raised, right? I was raised in a very different way. And so it's I think leadership and grouping is all a journey, The other thing that gets talked about is about building coalitions. And what we know, now when I talk about working in group, I'm talking about working in the group you're a part of, right? So Islander Feminist, working together as a group. When I start talking about a coalition, I'm talking about involving other groups to get the work done. Now, Kristin Sonoma, who is now, I believe she has John McCain's old seat in the Senate. She is infamous for this. She got liberal and conservative and moderate groups together to fight for very similar things. And she had to do it by enticing them in different ways. They all had different motivations. That is extremely impressive. That is rare.
Yeah.
But even if you can just find people on the same side of the aisle as you and get the numbers, you're going to be better off.
And these are the type of examples that people can stem from your teachings in this book.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Most
certainly.
definitely. I asked you if this would be one of many, but you said it took a lot of energy for this.
To write that book, yeah.
What do you think? If we get enough of our fans, we've got some people watching right now. What do you think about a part two?
Well,
if it were to happen, where do you think it would go?
Yeah, so it's funny. I have other book author friends on campus even who've written multiple books. And they all say to me, this book isn't important. I mean, it is important, but they're like, book isn't your only focus right now. Your focus should be, okay, what is that next book?
Yeah.
Which is very true in research when you're an academic. What's the next journal article? What's the next project, right? And that's what we do. It is a little addictive. People told me that it would be. I have ideas for other books, particularly around my journey with my biological family, but those aren't very academic books.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if it'll happen.
Are there any more truths to be told?
Oh,
from your perspective.
I'm 42, so I've got, hopefully I'm at the midway point or a little less, right? And so I imagine as I age and have more wisdom, perhaps I'll have more things to say as we see things change around us, which are always changing. I never thought we'd be where we are right now, 4 years ago. Maybe there'll be more, to share. But I also write a lot of book chapters for other people. I write journal articles. I present at conferences and other universities. And so there's always something kind of stewing. I hope that I can get a little mileage out of the book, and that as I'm speaking at these places, they'll kind of pick some book chapters for me to speak from, so I can get some use out of it before I have to start creating new material.
No, definitely. But I think it would be interesting if maybe you get a collection of truths from your forever students.
Oh.
You can put $10 in the jar for that one.
Kristin, you're going to be in the forward. You'll write the forward in the next book, or you'll be on the dedication page.
I would love to,
because that's a great idea. Edited books are a little easier.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Don't tell my editor friends.
Just to guide them along. Because you've met so many people now, and you will continue to meet people, I'm sure of it, who will open up and say, "I had my aha moment."
I am very
in your class or with your book or when you came to speak.
I am very intrigued by people's aha moments. I call them turning points.
Yes.
I'm very intrigued by them. And I'm actually making a presentation this week for a group in which I'm going to talk about turning points. And the thing is, they happen at different times in people's lives. Paulo Freire, who's a really well-known critical pedagogue, is known for bringing critical approaches to the classroom. He's a Brazilian. He found his at 13. Right?
Wow.
I was in my mid-20s. Some people, it's very late in life, when they have this moment. Some people never have it. They never have a point when they become activist, So I am very intrigued by turning points. And I was studying those long before I wrote the book.
Yes.
And couldn't get it published.
Wow.
I had an article on turning points that I was trying to get published in communication journals, and I couldn't get it published. So I pulled that information for one of these chapters. I couldn't use all of it, but I had interviewed a pretty well-known activist, and had their stories, and I was able to use some of them in this book.
Wonderful. Well, I'm super excited to finish the book. I've started it.
Good.
And I know that everyone who is watching this is probably feeling the same if they haven't finished this book. Because it just was released. Where can people who do not have it yet, where can they buy it?
So Amazon Prime, or you can use your Amazon Prime account to get it, which is a good way to get it because you can get it for the retail of $39.95. Don't pay over $39.95 for that book. Okay, that's the retail suggested price. Do not pay more than that for the book.
I like that.
Yes.
Saving us dollars.
Yes, because I've seen it for more than that out there. So $39.95, you can get your shipping paid, right, if you have Amazon Prime. Another way you can get it is through my publisher, so it's Cognella Academic Publishing. Cognella spelled Cognella.
Yep.
They sell it for $31.95 if you order it directly from them. Yes.
Just a little bit clearer.
Yes.
Sorry, guys, you can't see it.
They do charge you shipping though. And then finally, barnesandnoble.com. You can get it there. If you live in Oklahoma, around Tahlequah, the bookstore at Northeastern State University will have copies of the book. And after the 26th of November, they'll all be signed copies. Okay. So there should be some still there, even if you can't come to the book reading.
And Texas A&M Corpus Christi, do we need to kind of shout them out? What's going on? I didn't hear them on your list.
I haven't talked to the bookstore. It's a little weird for me because...
Do I need to pull some strings? I need to call some people.
as you know, I work as a full-time administrator there, and so I don't want to... I have to be really careful. I don't want to feel like I'm asking for favors, maybe just be better to go online.
Hey guys, we've got our back, right? So we can call the university and we can ask them. All right?
They pay. I get a check from them. Let's be nice to A&M University Corpus Christi.
But everyone does need to get to them. I mean, if anybody has somebody in their life that is needing that extra push to get to where they want to be, and you see their turning point clear as day, and maybe they don't, push them along with this book. Again, it's From Thought to Action, Developing a Social Justice Orientation. You guys are on the page. You know about this. Share. Please. Thank you so much, Amy, for being here. Was there anything else you would like to add?
Well, I'll just say I am an aunt of many nieces and nephews who are high school age. And I wrote this with them in mind too. So I think if you have an older high schooler who's pretty socially aware, they could read this book and get something from it too. I was very careful not to make it too academic.
Yeah.
So you'll notice it's not an APA style. There's no text. There's no source citations in the middle of it. Everything's at the end in the references.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I tried to make it very readable, and I had a great publisher who allowed me to do that, and they also allowed me to pick the cover.
Yes.
So that does not always happen. I was super excited
Can
about
you talk
that.
about the cover real quick?
Yeah, so what's kind of funny is when they first sent me, they had sent me some ideas, and this was one of the ideas. And then when they sent it to me, it was 2 white hands on the cover. And I said, did the artist read the book? Like, we don't want 2 white, we need some diversity.
Yeah.
And so then they sent it back with a little more diversity.
That would have been a real whole nother topic.
But I got to say, so my partner, Gene, is a designer. He's a print designer. And he even liked the cover. So when it got past him, because he thinks everything needs fixed. When I got past him, I was like, okay, this must be a good cover. So I love the cover. I get lots of compliments on the cover.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, we love it, and we're excited that we got to speak with you, hopefully to continue the discussion after your book tour so we can see if there's anything that you've learned along the way that you want to share with everyone as well, because that's also exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you guys for tuning in. And don't forget, you can always share this video, share this page with your friends, your colleagues, your family, and buy the book. We'll put a link on where you can buy the books, again, the Cognella, and also Amazon Prime and Barnes & Noble online.